Howdy, and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Today we've got a double header, two kits of the same aircraft. We have a Comet kit from 1954 and a Hawk kit originally issued in 1955, but we'll be looking at the 1959 issue of the kit. So here you can see the earlier boxing with Comet up here with the early issue. This is actually the first issue of the kit. Very simple in comparison to the much later issue of 1958 from Hawk, where you got full color illustration going here. So we're going to start out with taking a look at the Comet kit first, then we'll look at the Hawk, and we'll compare a little bit, and also give you a little bit of history on the actual subject aircraft that these models were based off of, and a little bit of history on the Skyray itself. So first up, we have the Comet kit. This was, as I said before, first issued in 1954. The scale's out to 1/89th scale, which is kind of an odd scale, but as with a lot of these kits in the early days, they were made to what they call box scale. They had standard size boxes, and they just made a kit to fit that box. So whatever size the airplane was, it was designed to be able to fit their standard box. So in this case, it ends up coming out to 1/89th. And so this was part of the very first group of kits that was produced by Comet in plastic. Comet had been making a lot of other wood kits prior to that and continued to make wood kits later on. But this was part of their first group of plastic kits. And that was designated by the PL in their name, or in the kit code. So it's PL-5, so this is the fifth one out of that first group of plastic kits. So again, real simple box. It's got a lithoed image of the F4D here, and it is unusual in that it is a flip-top box, and that it's a folded piece of cardboard, which creates the lid in itself. So it's all one piece of cardboard creating the entire box, which is kind of cool and cost-saving. But it's printed directly onto the cardboard. So the type of printing that was available then limited it to just solid colors. So you didn't get to have the fantastic artwork that you would see on later issues of kits. So we'll take a look at the box itself. On the side, you've got Comet models, faithful to the original in every detail. On the end here, you have another image of the kit number, 29 cents, and Comet's address. On the other side, same as the long side of the other one, and similar on this end as well. And on the bottom, for best results, use Comet paints and for plastics and Comet cement for plastics. So we'll look and see what we got inside. So open up the flip top here. And there's not much to this kit. So you've got a couple of fuselage pieces, a couple of wings, and that's just about it. So here we've got the fuselage. And it's all molded in white. There's only two locator pins, it looks like. 3 locator pins. One at the exhaust, one just above the cockpit, and one at the nose over here. Pretty good surfaces there. But as you can see, as you see in a lot of these early kits, you've got molded on markings, or inscribed markings in this case. All the detail is inscribed, fairly heavy, but it is inscribed as opposed to some of the raised stuff that you see with some of the other kits. You've got the molded in landing gear doors. There is not much to this. You do have the little bumper wheel on the tail, and then you got a molded in pilot with a little oxygen mask, and there's a little gun sight there. But they did a good job of creating one of the little antennas on there. But it's completely see-through when this was built, from the air intakes all the way to the afterburner, I guess, coming out the back. So that's your fuselage pieces. Now we'll take a look at the wings. One-piece solid wing. We've seen this on some other early kits as well too. Just one slot to slide in there. You've got, again, engraved panel lining, engraving for the elevons, aileron elevons, engraved markings. So pretty simple. And again, it's one solid piece as opposed to a top and bottom half. Nice part of that, you do get a fairly thin edge on these, which is sometimes lacking in some of the other kits. Got a couple of fillet pieces here. So that is one separate. There's a little bit of flash on there. A little bit of sink mark on these little pieces here, but that's the only other piece other than the fuselage pieces and wings. You have a cockpit canopy, molded in clear. It's got nice framing detail on it. Sometimes when we see some of these early kits, the framing is lacking quite a bit. It's got pretty decent framing on it. A little bit thick, but fairly clear. Not that you're going to see all that much with the molded in pilot, but it is a pretty nice little canopy. You do have the standard issue Comet stand with this, with the Comet name on it. Two-piece stand, which is good because there is no landing gear with this kit. So if you may have noticed that there are no trees with this. It's not uncommon for some of these early kits as well to have all the parts taken off the trees. Maybe one little tree for some smaller parts, but in this case there are no real smaller parts. So you just get all the parts together. So we'll take a look at the decals. Here we've got not the best decals in the world. The blue looks kind of off. The registration's a little off. These are a little bit old, so it appears that they may be cracking a little bit, but I don't know if those, where it's got the navy, if those may have been designed to have that kind of streak look on it, maybe to make it look like it goes faster. You've got little instructions on the back of how to apply your decals. Really, really tiny writing, so that's there. It is a specific aircraft, 130740. We'll talk a little bit about that afterwards, but it is a specific plane. Now we'll look at their instructions. Just an exploded view of the model with step-by-step assembly instructions. Use your Comet plastic cement and paint for results. Instead of using the stuff for their wood, they wanted you to use your plastic cement. There's a little bit of history of the aircraft down below. And that's it. Not that there's much to assemble here, so not much to instructions. They do give a little bit of painting guide on here. You can see where your decals are supposed to go. Of course, if you don't have the instructions, you just look at the kit and you'll see exactly where the decals are supposed to go. Final thing that's included in here, which is kind of neat, is a envelope addressed back to Comet. And what this was for is so you could send it in to get yourself a Comet catalog. And so you open it up and you're supposed to send them a dime, and they'd send you a catalog with your return address information. There's an actual little coin pocket here for you to slip the dime into, and then you mail this and put your stamp on here, a 3-cent stamp, mail this to Comet, and they'd send you their catalog, which at the time showed 122 kits. So pretty neat to have that still inside the box. So this is almost exactly what you would see when you if you purchased this kit back in 1954. So a little bit about this specific aircraft, 130740, was the first production or kind of pre-production aircraft. It's part of a batch of 10 that Douglas had made after the 2 prototypes. And this aircraft was sent to China Lake for doing some testing. Then it was sent back. It was bailed back to Douglas, who continued to do some testing. It was sent to China Lake in 54, I think it was. Yeah, 1954. And then it was given back to Douglas in May 25th of 1955. That ended up being written off by June of 1955. It was being flown by Bob Spa, Robert Bob Ron, who had set the some of the speed records, the absolute speed record that was set by the F4D. And so Bob was doing some testing. The aircraft ended up getting induced into an oscillation that ended up pulling 9 Gs on the aircraft, and it bent the wing spars, so the aircraft had to be written off. So short life for this particular plane, but the rest of that pre-production batch ended up doing a lot of testing, which helped them figure out, some modifications and things and what it could do. So that's the Comet kit. Let's take a look at the Hawk kit. So here we have the Hawk kit, same aircraft, Skyray by Douglas, the F4D, in this case F4D1 is what they designated on the box. This particular issue is from 1959. The original issue from Hawk came out in 1955, so a year after Comet's kit. This one's actually in a 1/72nd scale, so it's what became one of the standard scales in model aircraft. Hawk, it was pretty good about starting to make things in a consistent scale across the board. But as I mentioned, this was originally issued in 1955, and then they issued it again in a very strange, unusual triangle box in 1956. So I'll show you those what those boxes look like. But the main reason why they were issued in that triangle box in the previous issue, the 55 one, was in a large square box, was because when this kit was originally issued, it was issued with the whole top and bottom fuselage and wings all molded together. So very similar to the Hawk Javelin kit that we took a look at a few videos back. And like that Javelin kit, Hawk then adjusted that mold, clipped the wings on it in order for it to be able to fit in a more standard size box. And that's what we have here. This 59 issue of this kit is the first one where they had clipped the wings off of it. So you'll get to see how that looks. So first we'll take a look at their boxing. So Hawk's using a nice lithograph print. It's one of the hard boxes where it's glued, the lithograph is printed on paper and then glued around a hard box. So you got the Marine Corps all-weather interceptor. You got, looks like specific markings on here, where Hawk is from, 20 unassembled model kits, decals, Hawk logos. On one side, you've got information about some of their other kits, a Corsair, Convair C-130, C-131, a Jet Power multi-kit, SPAD, and I think it says Kamikaze, but that's a Baka bomb. On the end, you've got model number 62450, which again, the 50 stood for 50 cents. So this is a fairly cheap kit, 1959. Repeat of the artwork on here. This artwork, by the way, is done by a guy by the name of Bill Campbell, who did quite a bit of Hawk's box art. So let's take a look inside. So here you can see very different approach from what was done by Comet. Very large one piece, and this one's split top and bottom as opposed to left and right like what you saw on the Comet kit. So you've got a combination of recessed and raised panel lining on here. So you've got some recessing for the elevons, speed brakes, looks like some slats at the front of the wings. A few other things are recessed. And then you've got some fine raised panel line for the rest. But, not a lot of, these giant rivets that you see on a lot of other kits. And on the bottom, you've got molded in gear doors like you saw on the other kit. But you do have spots to be able to attach some landing gear if you should decided to do. So here you can see where the wings were cut in order to be able to fit inside a standard size box. If the wings continued out, you'd see why they would use a triangle box for this kit. So this one you do have a couple of sprues. The wings, once they'd been clipped off, were attached to a separate sprue. They are top and bottom like the fuselage wing. And then you've got another sprue for the landing gear. Fairly simplistic, some gear doors you have to put on there. And then you've got a separate tailpiece. Again, combination of engraved and raised panel lines. And then here's their canopy. Pretty decent framing again, fairly clear, but again, still pretty thick. But there is nothing inside this aircraft to be able to look at, so absolutely no cockpit detailing, absolutely no pilot. Same thing with the Comet kit. You can see straight through the air intake, right out the rear afterburner. So we'll take a look at their decals. Decals look a little bit better printed. These have yellowed a little bit over the years. There's some registration issues still, but a little bit more robust set of decals. This set has been cropped a little tight on the edge, so the Marines is getting cropped there. But like most of these kits, it's got instructions on how to make or how to apply the decals on there. So this is a specific aircraft also from VMF 513. Talk a little bit about that afterwards as well. And here's Hawk's instructions. It's a little bit different for Hawk. They give you full 4-view plans of the aircraft, a little bit of history in here, and also some of the painting instructions are on here showing you where the decals go and colors to use in painting it. Gives you a good idea of how the aircraft should look. And then here are the assembly instructions, which is done in a step-by-step, as opposed to a lot of the exploded ones. Show a sample of different tools you're going to need. And they're actually using photographs of the real model to show you how to put it together. Kind of neat. Pointing out the different parts. Nothing's called out by number or anything. They're just pointing out, hey, this is what it is. Interesting thing, they give you bomb shackles, but no bombs. So there also is no stand with this kit. So even though the gear doors are molded in the flying position, there's no stand on this one. So I don't know if the earlier issue of the kit came with a stand, but this one does not. So you can really only do it in a gear down position. But you can get some images of what it looks like when it's completed. You can also, it's saying you can also do the wings folded up if you want. So I guess they cut it right at the wing folding position, which is kind of neat. So that's it there. So let's talk about the aircraft. So this particular one, 34833, was an aircraft that was assigned to VMF 513, Marine Corps All-Weather Interceptor Squadron. They utilized the Skyray from 1958 to 1962. Started out, from 1958 to 1963. From 58 to 62, they were a naval air station at Sugi. And in 62 to 63, they moved to MCAS El Toro, which is actually just up the road from me here in California. The aircraft then was retired Went to NAF Litchfield Park in Arizona for long-term storage. That was done in April 13th, 1964. And then the aircraft was eventually probably melted down or sold off or something. The Litchfield Park in Arizona was where the Navy sent all of their retired aircraft. Eventually that got combined with the Air Force to become Davis-Monthan. So VMF 513, spent most of its early career as a night fighter, all-weather type of squadron. They initially started out with F4Us. They also had some Tiger Cats, the F7, F3 ends. Then they transitioned to jets in 52 while they were fighting in Korea with the F4D Skyray. Then those transitioned into 1958 to our subject here, the F4D, and they turned these in for Phantoms. They were one of the earliest Marine Corps Phantom squadrons, and they turned their Phantoms in for Harriers. They were the first Harrier squadron, and most recently they've been flying F-35Bs, and they're now an attack training squadron. So that's a little bit of history on the squadron and this particular aircraft. This kit, was issued a couple of times after this. The final issue that I was able to find was after Testors bought out Hawk, they started reissuing a lot of their kits under the Testors/Hawk name. And the final issue of it was in 1955 under the Testors only label. So, in 1995, you're buying a 40-year-old kit, and nowhere on the box does it tell you anything about that, but still a pretty decent little kit. So a few final words. The Comet kit, as I mentioned before, was first issued in 1954. Comet reissued it a few times. The Frog did put out an issue of this exact kit in 1957. So Frog wanted to get into some American jets, and so they got a hold of some molds that had already been made. So this fit in pretty nicely with a lot of the Frog kits at the time of the British European jets. The Comet kits, by late 50s, Comet was kind of pulling out of the plastic models and concentrating more on the wood. So Comet sold a lot of their molds to Aurora, and Aurora ended up reissuing this one and some of these early series ones that they had made as part of this set that Aurora made that were much smaller scale but much cheaper price than the standard Aurora kits. So they issued it from roughly about 57, 58 all the way through mid 60s. I think the last issue that I could find was 64. It was reissued one more time by Aurora Netherlands in 1968. And then there was an ADAR set combined with the Sky Knight from the same Comet/Aurora series that was issued a little bit later in the 60s as well. So pretty comparable little kits. The Comet kit is off scale, but nicely done. I like the fact it's got all engraved. Don't care for the engraved markings, but the Hawk kit is also pretty nice. A different way of putting it together, and it is a specific scale, which makes it nice. So final thoughts, if you're not familiar with the Douglas Skyray, this one was designed by the great Ed Heinemann. This is one of his designs. And this was the first carrier-launched aircraft to be able to hold the absolute speed record. That was 752.843 miles per hour for our European friends. That's 1,211.744 kilometers per hour. That was actually set by the gentleman I mentioned earlier that bent the wings, Bob Ron. And it also, the Skyray set a time to altitude record from a standing start to 49,200 and 21 feet in 2 minutes and 36 seconds. And it took off and flew straight up. Well, not quite straight up, but it flew up at a 70-degree pitch angle, which is pretty steep. So it was a pretty fantastic aircraft. Didn't stay in service very long because it really wasn't a Mach capable. It could breach the sound barrier to dive. But right after this aircraft came out, they started bringing out aircraft that were Mach capable, which kind of put this one out of business. The speed of how quickly aircraft were moving forward in their capabilities was happening so fast in this era, in this 50s, early 60s time period. So at the end here, I'm going to show you a few other images of some of the other boxings of these kits, and hope you've enjoyed this little comparison, and hope to see you again soon. Thanks for stopping by.